Let's tell you about the Commission for Gender Equality. It has accused the Basic Education Department of downplaying teenage pregnancy. The Commission has blamed some teachers for being perpetrators of rape cases in schools. Basic education officials were responding to a Commission report in Parliament investigating reasons for school dropouts. We're now joined by Advocate Nthabiseng Sepanya-Mogale, Commission for Gender Equality Chairperson. Ma'am, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Perhaps let's start with the research that was conducted. How exactly was it conducted and why?
We usually conduct research based on the issues that emerge from society broadly or some of the complaints that come to us, and we pick up a trend and a pattern and we follow those up. In this case, we were aware that there is media and other reports of high levels of teenage pregnancies across the country, but particularly in the three provinces of KZN, Limpopo, and the Eastern Cape, and that is where we went for further investigation.
Let's get into what the research found in KwaZulu-Natal. Let's start with that province.
Basically, in all the provinces, we found similar patterns. Number one is that a lot of learners get impregnated by older men. That's the first thing. Secondly, gets impregnated by older men and their educators. And in some instances, it's other young boys who are in the school or in the, a nearby school who have got very little sex education in terms of formal education by either the parents, the school, or any of the structures of community.
When it comes to the engagement with older men, what did you find from the young people that you spoke to in terms of the circumstances that they are faced with? Why would they find themselves at the mercy of older men?
And mostly it's lack of knowledge and understanding the repercussions, if one could use that word, of that kind of engagement. Secondly, it's purely economic and survivalistic engagements where the older man tends to provide certain things and grooms this young girl into finally engaging in sexual intercourse, and then they end up being pregnant. And thirdly, we found that there are several challenges that as a result of poor community services in terms of the use and knowledge of contraception and knowledge about termination of pregnancies, for example, is very, very limited, and people tend to actually think, well, this is my lot.
Maybe let's get into the repercussions, which some may not be aware of. What are some of those that you found in the report?
In the report, we found that, number one, despite all the existing policies created by the Department of Basic Education, there's still very limited information about those by both the parents, community members, community leaders, and even educators. Because some of the young girls would actually be bullied and harassed and belittled by the educators themselves for being pregnant in the school, whereas there are existing policies that demand that the educator be supportive and react in a particular way. That's the first thing. Secondly, even the leaving of the school, we find that it is still those sectors that end up encouraging or pushing this young girl out of school. It would be the teacher saying, I don't want you to influence other girls in my classroom. It would be the family saying, no, you're going to embarrass us, stay at home, community members. So it's almost like an onslaught from all angles, particularly including the school and the home, that is directed at this young girl, and they end up leaving school. That's the second repercussion. The third one is that there is a policy around postpartum return to education, and this is rarely and hardly ever implemented, where this young girl can go home and have the baby and come back and continue with their studies. There isn't that support despite existing a policy. And once there isn't that support, which means the 15-year-old, 12-year-old ends up staying at home, and in no time they end up with a second and even a third baby, and that's a very grave repercussion that we are seeing.
Ma'am, when we speak of, please do forgive me, I'm not sure how to even phrase this, right, but maybe not the importance, but the impact of such reports. Is it safe to say that this is an age-old practice where you see older men who are preying on younger women because of their socio-economic circumstances? The Statistician General just a couple of days ago was speaking about how the age group of between 15 and 24 is vulnerable. They wake up every single morning, millions of them, and they have nothing to do about their day. You also find that they are not in spaces where they have a head of a household. They become the heads of the household in some instances. And so when we take a look at impacts of such reports and others that we see in the country, these problems that we have identified for years and years and years, yet some of the foundational problems like sorting out socio-economic conditions for young people in the country, providing alternatives. You can have all the policies you like, but it would appear that we're not moving the needle. Why?
Yeah, yes, to a large extent, you have actually captured the problem. It has been going on for quite some time now. That's the first thing. But secondly, because of the lack of opportunities of young people, it continues unabated. Young people are idling out there. But above all, because of the lack of support where a pregnancy occurs, you add to the number of young people who are outside of any system to groom them positively and marshal them in a particular direction. Because that young girl now stays at home, they are without skills, they are without education, they are without any means of potential for income, and therefore all what they can do is to rely sometimes on the parents if they're there, or even on somebody who helps them to take care of this baby. It may be the father of the baby, it may be another one, and in no time there is a second and a third baby on the way. So it's society that is actually supposed to respond differently, because at the rate at which we are going, we are failing our young people.
Ma'am, you mentioned some of the factors where you use the word onslaught. So young people get pregnant, and you always hear this also. I don't know if you always hear it, but I don't know if you have heard it. They will tell you that ngwana kwa mme wa hae or ngwana kwa mosadi, right? And already you know what time it is, that you're on your own. And so this onslaught that young people face and the pressures to say, now you're pregnant, now you must stay home and take care of the baby. Talk to us about how us as a society can change that, right? So if in my household, my daughter comes and tells me that I'm pregnant, how do I deal with that? Do I then take care of the baby for her and encourage her to go back to school? Because it's not a death sentence. More so if you choose to keep the baby.
Yes. The first option would actually be discussing about the choice to or not to keep the baby. That would be the first one. Secondly, it actually is further investigation by the parents about how the pregnancy occurred. Sometimes we take it for granted that young girls have participated in consensual sex when it is not that. So it must be investigated whether it is rape or not. But thirdly, there is also what we call statutory rape. When your child is below 16, it is a non-negotiable. It is statutory rape, and a different approach has got to be taken. Charges have got to be laid. Police have got to be informed. Prosecution has to happen. Somebody has to be jailed. It is, at face value, as simple as that. However, we have a situation where even where the other part of the pregnancy comes, the family is so poor that they settle for any means of survival that this person can present to them. And that's a reality that a lot of families, a lot of young girls are faced with, because for some families it's almost like this person says they're sorry, but they'll give us 1,000 rand a month. You're not even sure how long it will take. But hey, it's better than nothing, because at the rate at which we are going, we spend a lot of days without even a basic food. So it's that kind of thing. But the other one is where parents, even when they afford, tend to be so upset that they say you are on your own, instead of looking at this in a particular context to say, how do we salvage what is left of the possible future of this young child? Because when somebody is 15, there is a huge potential that is still there that can be tapped into of a young person. Parents tend to be upset and feel you're on your own, we're punishing you, you shouldn't have done this. Instead of saying, at 15, yes, this is a disaster. No child must have a child. However, let's see how we can support. And then take it from there to groom this young mother in the right direction and help them to take care of the child and help them to see things differently and not to be hard on themselves. Because once they are hard on themselves, that is where they end up feeling, well, my future is over, I've disappointed my community, my friends, and everybody around me. What's the point? I might just as well continue. This is my lot. And that's the biggest mistake that we see.
So I guess essentially what we're hearing today, that it's a collective effort. It's not just certain departments, but you and I as well, more so when we speak of some of the language. You know, when a young person falls pregnant and the baby comes and they're called by all sorts of names and they have stigmas. So it's an all of us problem to solve. Thank you very much, Advocate Nthabiseng Sepanya-Mogale, Commission for Gender Equality Chairperson.